Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again, it is Sunday, and that means it's time for the Texas Gun Vault Poll Question of the Week, a weekly vlog that I put out where I ask you as my viewers and subscribers about something that deals with guns, gun culture, politics, current events, the news, or something fun like EDC that I want to get your thoughts and opinions on. And this week's question deals with compromise. More specifically, what compromise really is. After all, we might have some different meanings of that word when it comes to the people that we debate in the great American gun debate. For me, compromise in a negotiation means that you give up something and I give up something, and neither of us are truly happy or have total victory, but we come to an agreement. But when it comes to arguing with many anti-gunners, they'll claim that we on the pro-gun side never compromise. Why won't we give up any ground? And in return, we say, well, why don't you repeal these gun laws that don't obviously work, and we will give you this one. And they go, no, you can't repeal gun safety legislation. Well, then it's not compromise. You're asking for us to always give up ground. But this week's question, as I said, is more of a hypothetical question. What if we were negotiating in good faith with people that truly did want to compromise? After all, they're saying, well, some of these laws are silly, they don't work, we want to try to find laws that will. Now, I also want to say that I'm sure there's some people that are going to watch this video and are going to disagree with me, not because we have different goals. After all, I am a libertarian and I believe in the abolition of all firearms laws here in the United States. The Constitution says what the Constitution says shall not be infringed. However, I'm a strategist. If you don't know, I'm an INTJ on the Myers-Briggs Personality Type Indicator. I'm an architect. I'm a mastermind. Everything in the world is like a chessboard. Sometimes, like Sun Tzu says in The Art of War, you have to lose a battle to win a war. And he also says that all battles are won and lost before they are ever fought. And this is something that I think many pro-gunners are short-sighted with. They don't look at the long game, and I completely understand their apprehension. After all, we have lost ground since 1934. Every time a law is passed, it is always infringing upon our rights. It's taking something away. Very rarely, only at the state level does this happen, do we see pro-gun legislation forwarded. Everything that happens at the federal government is another infringement upon our liberty. So apprehension on the pro-gun side is understandable. But from my perspective, I'm looking at winning the long game, getting many of these gun laws repealed. Now, I should say that I know a lot of people in the comments are going to say, shall not be infringed. I will only accept absolute victory. Any gun law is unconstitutional. And as I said, I agree. So just because I am willing to compromise on something now doesn't mean we're not on the same page or we're not thinking the same way. All that I'm saying is that I am trying to play the long game. When you're playing a game like chess, sometimes you have to give up pieces to fool your opponent. You have to give them the perception that they're winning. And then after a certain length of time, you can get absolute victory. It's a mind game. It's not a battle that can be won by brute force and will alone. If you're a soldier in a war, let's take World War I for example, and you just want to defeat the Central Powers, well, you get your rifle, you get out of the trench, you run into no man's land, and you're going, oh, we will win! And you get shot down and it's all over for you and that's it. So what did you accomplish? Absolutely nothing. You have to have a strategy. And I think that many people on the pro-gun side, when they're unwilling to play this game, now when I say compromise, I'm talking about the true term compromise, not what anti-gunners say is compromise. I think that many on the pro-gun side lose because they look like they're unwilling to negotiate, that they're arguing in bad faith. And as I said, just because you come to the table and are willing to negotiate doesn't mean you can't win absolute victory in the end, because I want, as I mentioned, the abolition of all firearms laws probably more than you. I just have to look at the world and the way it is. Will we ever repeal every firearms law in the United States? I hate to tell you, the answer is no. There is not a single thing in our world that is unregulated, even the most innocuous things like fishing. Think about all the regulations from just personal fishing to commercial fishing that has some type of rule, regulation, or the like attached to it. There is nothing in our society that doesn't have some type of arbitrary or capricious thing. And many people are going to say it infringes upon our rights, and I agree. But if we're smart, we can win the long game. We're not going to win it this year. You're not going to convince a majority of Americans that no gun law should exist. That's not going to happen. And hoping it's going to happen and saying all gun laws are an infringement isn't going to make it happen anytime soon. But how can we make that happen? Well, you play the long game, you strategize, and you fool your opponent. And that's what this is about, because I believe that we can repeal very bad gun law, give anti-gunners laws that on the books might not really be all that important, but in their mind, they're winning a victory. Then as we repeal more laws, you see, well, you know those laws that we repealed, they didn't work. Well, the laws that we just passed, well, they don't work either. Then you can slowly repeal things over time. But if you're unwilling to play that long game, unwilling to strategize, you will lose. And I think that is why the pro-gun side has been losing since 1934. That's why we're always playing defensive. We're never offensive. We never force the other side to come to the table to negotiate the repeal of gun laws. It's always to stop new ones from being passed. So, that's my thoughts on all this. So let's dive right into this week's question. This week's question deals with more gun politics. In the gun debate, many times we hear the word compromise thrown around. However, to many of us in the pro-gun community, the word seems to mean something very different than the anti-community. Compromise means both sides giving up something they want to come to an agreement. But the modern gun debate, often compromise means the anti-gun side gets something they want while the pro-gun side still loses ground. However, in a hypothetical situation where the pro-gun politicians were playing 4D chess, like the anti-gunners do now, i.e. pass gun laws in piecemeal, are there any laws, regulations, or true compromises you would be willing to agree to? Right now, the anti-gunners want red flag laws and universal background checks. While we know they are going to be ineffectual, would you be willing to concede them to gain something else we might want? Would you be willing to give the anti-gun side red flag laws and/or universal background checks for any of the following? And I can already hear people in the comments frantically typing as fast as they can. I am not giving up any ground. I'm not going to give them anything they possibly could want. And all I am asking you in this poll, which by the way is hypothetical because we know none of this is going to happen, right? This is not going to happen on the national level. This is just a thought question for us on this side to say, hey, what is truly important to us? Because for me, I put a value on everything. So for example, there's a law in the books that says when you fill out a ATF 4473 to purchase a firearm from a federally licensed arms dealer, you have to show a valid state-issued ID. Now, for me, that is not a huge infringement. On the grand scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the least infringement and 10 being absolute infringement, I put this at about a 1 or a 2. It's not that big of a deal. However, when it comes to a law like the National Firearms Act, where they're like, well, if you have a barrel length on your rifle of 15.9 inches and you didn't pay your $200 tax, well, you're going to jail for 10 years. You owe us $250,000. Well, that's about a 9 or a 10 infringement. So I go, okay, just hypothetical, even though it would never happen, would you be willing to accept that every time you buy a gun, you have to show a state-issued ID to repeal the NFA? And for me, it's a win because on the grand scheme of things, you have a light infringement that would be passed, which by the way, already is in law, and you would repeal one that is much more infringing. So I kind of look at it from that perspective, and I want to balance the equation because right now all of the laws are really on the upper end of this spectrum. And I look at some laws as going, okay, while it might be a 4 or a 5, if you're willing to repeal one that I look at as a 6 or a 7, I look at it as a win temporarily, and then over time, as I said, once we start to repeal laws, we can show anti-gunners, we can show the general population, look, we repealed these laws and nothing happens. Let's repeal this next one because it's not needed. That's how you change minds, that's how you change hearts, and that's how you win people through logic and reason, not just an emotional response. So, with that said, let's actually see what you guys had to say in this week's results. With over 1,100 votes this week, we have national reciprocity. You can carry concealed nationwide, 13%. Repeal the NFA. Silencers and machine guns are no longer restricted, 19%. Abolish the ATF. No more rogue agencies ruling by decree, 17%. No compromise. I will only accept unconditional victory, 49%. And something else, explain in the comments, 2%. And the results of this poll don't really surprise me too much. I know that there's a majority of people that watch my channel that are going to only expect unconditional victory. That is the only thing that they will settle on because that's what they've been told because they're short-sighted. Now, I'm not calling you short-sighted if you voted for this. After all, we're all on the same page here. I think that all gun laws are unconstitutional, but I'm also a realist. I also know that we're not going to get them repealed tomorrow. We're not going to change the vast majority of Americans who think that there should be some type of regulation to all of a sudden turn to our side. That's not going to happen. So I look at it from the perspective of what can we do to win the long game. After all, the anti-gunners play the long game, and that's why they're winning or have won in the past. And we refuse to play this game for some reason because there's so many people that go, I'm not giving up any ground. And then the anti-gunners take people like that and say, see how unwilling they are to compromise or to negotiate in good faith. And then it turns hearts and minds against us. And I'm thinking to myself, we can win this. We can get all the gun laws repealed. We just have to do it in piecemeal. We just have to do it in a smart way. We have to let our enemies think that they're winning. And then when they don't realize it, we have the absolute victory. That's my goal. You have to strategize. You have to have a plan. And just being that one soldier that I talked about in World War I and going into that trench, thinking you're going to win the day and getting shot, it doesn't help the cause at all. It's better to hang back. It's better to be a group and have an organized strategy. One of my favorite scenes from one of my favorite movies, The Empire Strikes Back, Luke Skywalker tries to lift the X-Wing out of the swamp, and he can't. He turns to Master Yoda and says, I can't, it's simply too big. Then Master Yoda uses the Force, lifts the X-Wing out. Luke is astonished and says, I don't believe it. And then Yoda responds, and that is why you fail. And that's the message I like to give to my fellow pro-gun people. Many people think we can't win by doing it a different way. It just has to be an absolute onslaught of the repeal of every gun law. Otherwise, there is nothing we can do. And I'm here to tell you that in my opinion, it can be done, but we have to be smart. You might not believe me, but that's why you fail. That's why we fail as a pro-gun community. But let's go through each one of these. I'll tell you guys my personal thoughts and opinions. First off, we have national reciprocity. You can carry concealed nationwide. It's simply saying that if you have a concealed carry license in one state, it has to be honored in all other states, just like driver's licenses. We already know from the statistics that people that have these licenses are some of the most law-abiding people in the country. In fact, statistically, they're more law-abiding than the actual people enforcing the law. So when these states go, you can't carry in our state, we're not trained enough, you're dangerous. Well, you can actually look at the other states, most of the time like 35 of the other states, where you have very easy concealed carry laws and go, well, there's nothing wrong with this. Well, a repeal of this law would show many anti-gunners or people that are not knowledgeable about firearms and go, wait, we repealed this and nothing happened. It's like here in Texas. We now have open carry. And I remember when they passed open carry, anti-gunners were saying blood was going to run in the streets. There'd be people with guns everywhere. When it came to road rage, guns just everywhere, shopping centers. And to be honest with you, I don't see anybody open carrying a handgun, even though it's completely legal. There's no problem with it. Occasionally I'll see one, and most of the time it's at pro-gun or pro-Second Amendment events. And since they repealed the you can't carry openly law, well, has crime gone up? Well, no. Has there been any issues with open carry? No, and now it's not even an issue. That's how we have to win this. And I think national reciprocity is a very good thing. Now, being here in Texas, I don't travel out of the state too much. After all, Texas is as big as some other countries. But I know if you live maybe up in the Northeast, this would be a great advantage because you're crossing state lines all the time. And it's impossible to navigate this patchwork of laws. To be very honest with you, I look at not being able to carry in every state as an infringement about a 6 or a 7 on that little scale I was telling you about, where I look at things like universal background checks or maybe even red flag laws as about a 4 or 5. They're still pretty bad. I mean, I'm against them completely because after all, when it comes to universal background checks, we have the issue of what's going to happen if there's a national gun registry, because that's the only way that you could ever enforce that. And then red flag laws, of course, are a problem of due process more than the Second Amendment. Now, I personally believe that in the long run, we can get red flag laws overturned because they go against other amendments of the Constitution, not just the Second Amendment, but your right to due process. We can win that battle. So in a way, I'm like, okay, you get your red flag laws. Go ahead and do it. Yay! And we got a repeal of another gun law, and then later the red flag law is overturned in courts because it's unconstitutional. Then we get 2 things that we want. No red flag laws, and now we have national reciprocity. As I said, that's how I want to win this game. Then we have repeal the NFA. Silencers and machine guns are no longer restricted. Now, for me personally, you guys know the type of collector that I am. I look at this as an 8, 9, or 10 level infringement. So for me, this is absolutely crazy, stupid, and ridiculous. Silencers are safety devices. And why is a 15.9-inch barrel so much more dangerous than a 16-inch barrel and worthy of you going to jail for 10 years and paying a $250,000 fine? Well, it's not. It's silly. It's stupid. So in some ways, I'm willing to give up those other things to repeal the NFA. This is probably the one that I would vote for, mainly because once a repeal of the NFA happened, you can go to the public and say, look, we repealed this law that was on the books since 1934, and gun crime hasn't gone up. These guns aren't an issue. See how silly this all is? Let's reevaluate some other laws that maybe you have misunderstood and think they're doing something that they're not. Then we have abolished the ATF, no more rogue agencies, rulings by decree. Now, 17%. Now, I agree that the ATF needs to be stripped of their ability just to make up regulations and laws all on their own. However, we're not going to get rid of all gun laws in the United States. So the question comes is who enforces those gun laws? There's always going to be something. Actually, I think is going to be a harder push. I actually think repealing the NFA is more doable than abolishing the ATF, just because you're going to have some type of regulation agency to oversee the implementation of all these laws. And I think for a lot of people, even the people that are center of the road, they're not going to go for it to go, well, we're going to have all these laws, but no one's going to enforce them. Then we have no compromise. I will only accept unconditional victory. 49%. This was the majority. I knew this was going to be it. But as I said, I am right there with you. This is the one in my heart I want to vote for. But I'm also a realist. We're not going to win that way. We all just can't say it's all or nothing and go out and vote, and we're not the majority, and then we lose, and then we have more infringements on our rights. And the other side can use this attitude to make us look crazy, and we don't want that. We want to look calm, collected, and reasonable. We want to win the day 40, 50 years from now. Because as I said, you're not going to win this battle by electing one person, one president, one representative. It's not going to happen tomorrow, next week, next month, a year, or even a decade. It took us too long to get here, and the path back will take us just as long. But if we're smart, we can win that victory. And then finally, we have something else explained in the comments. So as I said, the results really didn't surprise me, but I am a little bit sad, only because I feel like the people that vote for the absolute and unconditional victory are a little short-sighted. My heart is there with them. But that's not how we're going to win this battle. But that's my personal opinion. So, that's what you guys had to say with your results and my opinions on those results. But let's see what you guys had to say this week with the top-rated comments. With our top-rated comment, we have JaredDog3, who said, I used to be willing to say I'd give up this for that when I was a new gun owner. I didn't understand why gun owners were so unreasonable. Then little by little, I kept seeing how the zombie wave of gun laws kept coming forward. Slow and steady. Just kept taking more and more and saying compromise and then taking more and never giving anything in return. Then I realized why gun owners were so unreasonable. They've been robbed at every point by the anti-gun groups and are expected to come to the table for another deal with people who keep robbing them. In no other situation would one group be expected to compromise with a totally untrustworthy group. And this is a great analysis of exactly what has happened. And this is why I'm saying we have to change how we fight this battle. This is absolutely right. In the past, we have compromised, but we've been using the term compromise from the anti-gun side. Why don't we go to the table and start to turn this tide around and go, okay, you want to compromise? Here's our terms. Here's some things we're willing to compromise on. Force them to be the ones that are unreasonable. To go, we're not going to repeal any of that, and go, well, I came to the table trying to compromise. I'm totally willing to give you some of the things that you want, and here's what I'm asking for in return. Let's come to an agreement. Let's negotiate. Then all of a sudden, the anti-gunners are showing their true colors. So when I made this poll, it's what I was saying. This is more of a hypothetical, but a hypothetical from a situation where actually compromise meant compromise. Then we have Taticus Legion 78, who says, if the 50 states and territories accept driver's license from all 50 states and territories, they can accept national CCW permit. And once again, I agree. To me, this is not even a very controversial thing. You know, the anti-gunners like to say universal background checks are just common sense. Well, I think having a national reciprocity bill so law-abiding gun owners don't get entrapped in other states is, once again, common sense. Then we have Gary Drum, who says, simply put, shall not be infringed is pretty clear. Compromise is infringement. And I agree. But remember, we're not going to go from here to no gun laws overnight. We have to start turning this ship around. And so coming to the table and with real compromise, they give up something, we give up something, can begin to turn that tide. And so I know a lot of people will look at this poll and look at this word and they feel like, I'm not going to give up anything. We're always going to lose. If we play it smart, we won't. Then we have Taryn499, who said, I would go along with universal background checks on the condition SBR, SBS, and suppressors are no longer NFA items. And you can buy new machine guns. Even if they say no, they're on the defense as we tried to compromise with them and they refused. And that's it. That is what I'm trying to get at. So even if the negotiation fails and there is no compromise, well, they don't get to pass their law because they didn't compromise with us. And now, who's on the defense? Because we're the ones that came to the table in good faith. We're the ones that said, okay, you want this? We'll give it to you, but we want this in return. Then now they're the ones that aren't compromising. They're the ones that look unreasonable. And that's how we turn the tide. And then finally we have Keith Tate, who says, we have given up too much already. The Second Amendment is clear and I'm tired of being infringed upon. And brother, so am I. But we can work together to change it. Now, I know the results of this poll aren't going to change anything on the national stage. All I wanted to do in this video is to maybe open up some of your eyes to the potential of absolute and unconditional victory if we play our cards right. If we have a strategy, if we fight it the way the anti-gunners do, we can win the day, that promised land of the true meaning of the Second Amendment being applied all across the nation can happen. It can be true, but we have to do it the right way. We have to play this game smart. We have to outsmart our enemies, play their game better than they do, make them look like they're unreasonable, and repeal laws that are big-time infringements and giving them the little infringements, and then over time getting those overturned in courts or maybe in the court of public opinion. This battle can be won, but we have to do it in a smart way. Why do you think we look up to great military strategists of the past? Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, George S. Patton. Not because they just went out on the battlefield and fought as hard as they could, just throwing as many men at the battle as they could, and just giving up nothing. No, because they were strategists. They knew, okay, I have to give up this hill. I'm going to take this valley and take this mountain. And then when they recoup, I'm going to have absolute victory. We have to think in those terms. All battles are won and lost before they are ever fought. Never forget that. We can win this battle. We can win this day. We're all on the same page here, but I know we disagree on how we can do it. So, I know that we won't come to an agreement, and some people probably don't like me because I think they're short-sighted and blinded that it's unconditional, no compromise forever. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying I'm willing to compromise. I'm not saying I want universal background checks or red flag laws. But I'm willing to use those as a starting point to show the anti-gunners are the unreasonable ones. To start repealing these horrific laws that are already on the books and then working to repeal the ones that we negotiated to let them have in some shape or form. We can win. It's not today, not tomorrow. But trust me, we can win. We need a strategy. So that's the Texas Gun Vault poll question of the week. I hope you guys don't hate me. I know some people are going to disagree, but that's okay. But we're all on the same side here. If you would like to participate in next week's poll, please go to the community tab of my YouTube channel. I will put a link in the description and go over there and vote, comment, and like other people's comments so we can get the top rated comments of the week. I look forward to a great discussion in that comment section that I've already mentioned. So, as always, thanks for watching.